Hello, this is Steven, and yes, we're back with yet another Batman 66 episode review. And today we'll be viewing The Great Train Robbery, which would sadly be the final time we would see Shame. So without any further ado, let's head straight into the review. In our previous episode, Batman and Robin up against Shame and attract him to the hideout. However, when they got there, the only person they found was Frontier Fanny, Calamity Jan's mother, and Shame's fiancée. Just as they get there, they still question Frontier Fanny on Shame, where he is, where's Batgirl, because he's kidnapped Batgirl, and the only thing she tells them is that he's planning the big crime of the century. Just as that's happening, Shame and his henchmen go to a local gun store and take it over. And apparently they need every weapon in the place for the Great Train Robbery. Batgirl is apparently there, but is locked in the car of the automobile. However, Calamity Jan notices that her mother is not there, and essentially asks Shame to help her out in getting her back. At first, Shame is reluctant, but then agrees as soon as Calamity is pleading. We do the opening credit, and we're back in Police Commissioner Gordon's office. While everyone is worried about Batgirl, Gordon is more worried about Barbara, as he hasn't had contact with her in a long time. Just as that happens, Chief Standing Pat comes into the office with an ultimatum, an exchange between Batgirl and Frontier Fanny. And with no catch, then they are told to meet at the Gotham City Pavilion, which, as for those who remember, is the same place where a Riddler attacked in the very first episode of the series, as apparently the place has been closed down and no one will bother them there. We then see Shame, Calamity Jan, and Fred all getting ready for what is obviously a showdown. Chief Standard Pat comes and informs them about the Batman's agreed to the deal, and they plan to get there ahead, bushwhack them, and get ready for the Great Train Robbery. I like how Fred is, as Shame's saying this, Fred is finishing his line, and then at the end he says, "Tally-ho," and Shame has to say to Calamity Jan, "You sure he's Mexican?" And they leave for the pavilion. Shame, Calamity Jan, Fred, Chief Standard Pat, and two more henchmen are all there waiting for Batman, Robin, and Frontier Fanny to appear. They've also brought Batgirl with them. Just as they hear Batman and Robin coming, they then hide, planning to ambush them. Batman, Robin, and Frontier Fanny are there, and Shame and his men come out with guns drawn, prepared to gun them down as soon as they hand over Frontier Fanny. Realizing that would happen as soon as they hand Frontier Fanny over, Batman then uses a device in his utility belt that results in all the guns being forced down to the ground, makes it 20 times heavier. Realizing that they have no guns, a bat fight breaks out. It's Batman and Robin versus Shame and the henchmen. Once Batgirl gets untied, she joins in. The fight seems to go in their favor until Shame ends up picking, which is obviously a very heavy gun, to shoot at a bunch of, I don't know what they are, really, but ends up falling on the dynamic trio's head, and gives Shame, Calamity Jan, Frontier Fanny, Fred, and Chief Standing Pat the opportunity to quickly get out. Just as soon as we then cut to Batman, Robin, and Batgirl, all at Police Commissioner Gordon's office, still trying to figure out what Shame's big endgame is. Batgirl said as soon as the fear gas wore off, the only thing she could remember was Shame constantly mentioning the Great Train Robbery. But they still do not know what it could mean. Chief O'Hara kind of comes up with the answer as he's taking out money to go and buy drinks for everyone to cool off. He says that one of his dollar notes needs to be turned into the bank, as it was pretty much in circulation since the turn of the century. Batman then comes up with the clue, as the day is where they send by train all the old money to be sent to the treasury for destruction. Sorry. Realizing that Shane's must be objective, they then head there, and everything begins to pull into play. They use the money to buy a settling torch and a drill, with the drill attached with a diamond. Now, the settling torch was to be used on the tracks to stop the train. They would then use the drill with the diamond to burst into the train, and then when sprayed with a bunch of fear gas, Shame and his men come in and steal all the money. Batman, Robin, and Batgirl arrive too late. They of course help the civilians on board, and with that, Batman comes up with an idea to take down Shame. We then go back to the Batcave where Batman, Robin, and Alfred are there to send a Bat drone to skyride across the sky for Shame and his men, Shame, to come to a old deserted street to have a showdown at high noon. A classic Western trope, and of course Shame, who can't be stand being called a coward, who can't, and of course the love for the Old West has to come. But Shame, like we've established, doesn't play by the rules. He plans to have an ambush. Also during this scene, I like when Fred says, how's this, cash going to be divided up? Shame finally says, yep, he's Mexican. And I laughed at that. I laughed at that so much because it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and sadly a little bit offensive. Anyway, but with that, Batman agrees to go there alone. And I like how he's saying goodbye to everyone because he expected he's going to die. Shame and all his gang are there. Batman and Shame enter the alley, essentially to have a standoff, while Shame's gang, Calamity Jan, Frontier Fanny, Fred, and Chief Stan and Pat aim with rifles prepared to gun Batman down. But however, Batgirl and Robin turn up and apprehend the two. Now, it's just cute that how those two are. I'm sorry, but I will always say this. Robin and Batgirl have far better chemistry despite their age difference, more than Batgirl and Batman. When Shame realizes his plan to gun Batman down is bogus, he then tries to gun Batman down with a gun hidden in his hat, a reference to his first outing, but Batman knocks the gun out and Shame acts like a coward. Again, I like how they establish without guns, Shame is nothing more than a chicken-livered coward. He then, of course, grows a spine and starts to fight Batman. I love this fight, it's one of my favorite in the series, and it ends with Batman beating Shame. And it's just awesome. The choreography, the intensity, it's just great. We end the episode with Commissioner Gordon saying that Shame and the whole gang have been sent to prison and the money undoubtedly returning. Chief O'Hara then says, hopefully they'll get some peace around here. But just as that's happening, we cut to King Tut escaping. And he's a villain for next week. I like how Batman really thought he was really going to die when he went up against Shame. He was expected to die. And of course Robin and Batgirl coming in at the end essentially save him from being killed. Commissioner Gordon and Chief O'Hara do very little as always, and Alfred surprisingly is also part of that category. Gordon, always worried about Barbara, is again something that's really good with his character, as it really shows he really is a father. Nothing really changes in regards to the main cast. Shame, played by Cliff Robertson, still great here. I really like how they establish without guns, Shame is nothing more than a coward. I'm surprised how a person that dumb could come up with these capers. It's really sad that this is his final appearance, but despite the quality of the episodes, I really feel that this is better written and better explores the character far more than it did in his Season 2 appearance. He also looks far better. I really like they brought him back for Season 3, as he was arguably one of my favorite villains from Season 2. Another thing I also like about this two-parter is Calamity Jan, how she works with Shame. Dina Merrill, who was Shame's real-life, the Shame's actor, Cliff Robertson's real-life wife at the time, the two work incredibly well together. There is great chemistry. She's not really that big of a threat, and her costume is not that interesting compared to Shame's, but she is just a great character, and she works incredibly well off with Shame. I also like this time Shame's gang. Frontier Fanny is really a pain to Shame along with Fred. He can't understand what Fred's saying, and Frontier Fanny is always getting on his nerves. I really admit that Shame really does love Calamity Jan, and Calamity Jan really does love Shame back. I think the only henchman that doesn't give him any grief is Chief Stan and Pat. Again, the gang is pretty much an homage and poking a little bit of fun at the Western stereotypes. I like how it's just poking fun, not being racist, just poking fun at the Western stereotypes, and it takes full advantage of it. I love it so much. Also, of course, King Tut made a little appearance, and King Tut will be back in the next episode. The Great Train Robbery for me is another good episode. I say this two-parter is arguably some of the best episodes of Season 3. It's a personal favorite of mine, probably because of Shame. Despite the quality of the episodes, I feel that the writing and character development we got in this two-parter is far better than what we got in Season 2 with Shame. It's a shame that this is literally the last time we'll see him, but I like that they brought him back. He was so popular that they had to bring him back, and I think he had more free range in acting wise, and of course because he's a Western, he has to pull off a train robbery. I like how they still stick to, despite Shame being in the modern century, his crimes are still based on the Old West. And there we have it. That was the Great Train Robbery. Sadly, the final appearance of both Shame and Calamity Jan, but don't worry, next week, the dynamic trio will be going up against King Tut for the last time. So without any further ado, tune in to the next Steven Hour, the next Steven Channel, the next Steven Time. Ladies and gentlemen, so long for now.